Greetings, future masters. I ran into this endgame problem that I wanted you to see. It's quite unique. So, this is the move Black plays. What was that? Okay. And so the thing that happens here, I'm going to shorten this for you a little bit, is that you look at the basic things are, well, can I just queen on this guy? You know, rook c8, rook takes rook, pawn takes rook equals queen. Well, of course. But he's not going to take your rook. So, if we play rook c8 check, he's going to answer us with something like king d, e, or f7, obviously, whatever. I think you should play king to d7, but it doesn't really matter. King to d7 or king to e7. Let's go here in the middle. King to e7. And it's like, well, we take his rook, but he's going to queen on us, that jerk. Okay. So it's like, okay, we do this check. He goes here. If we take his rook, he's going to go do the same thing to us. How bogus, right? So I said, well, my next idea was rook takes pawn. Haha, I'm smarter than you. Rook takes rook. Rook checks. He can't take because I queen. So he goes king to e7 or whatever. I go rook takes rook. I go, haha, I won a pawn. Great. I won a pawn I can never queen because my king is over here on the opposite corner of the board from where my pawn is. Trust me, this is not going to win. This is a draw. So you forget about that. Okay, I'm like, okay. So my genius rook takes pawn draws because his king and rook will overpower this pawn, no question, and it's not even debatable. So that's a draw. And I go, well, that's the only move I have. That's all I have. I mean, I can play rook takes g7. And then, once again, hammer time. He does this. I can't take him, so I go here, and I go, he takes, and I do the same thing, and it's like, I go, you know what? This is exactly the same thing that I was doing to him, except now he's doing it backwards to me. And I said, well, that's good for him, so it must be good for me. So I don't take rook takes g7. I looked at it again, I go, you know what? I realized that this sequence for me, I'm doing it first. And if I take g7, then he does it first to me. So it came to my mind, what we're doing here is we're playing a desperado. Normally the desperado is I take, you take, I do something, whatever. Okay, so it's a take, one guy takes, the other guy responds to the capture by capturing or doing something different. Okay, so this is the desperado technique or tactic, except we're not taking pieces necessarily as the desperado. We're in the desperado situation to the point where he who queens first wins, and that's me. Both of my thumbs are pointing at me. So it was like, yeah, that looks really impressive, but you can't see that. Okay, so I go, okay, I check him. He goes king to e7 or whatever. I take his rook. Then it's his turn. This is the desperado. My turn captures his rook because he doesn't take because he's not stupid. He does the same thing. Rook to b1 check. Well, I'm not stupid, so I don't take him. I go king to h2. He takes my rook. And then you should hopefully see what is coming up. But I'm delaying this just a few seconds more so that those of you who can get this will get this. And if you can't figure this out, that's okay. I'm going to show it to you because it's awesome. It's super rare. I've never really seen this exactly before. Okay, this is the thing, king e7. Desperado stage 1, I took his rook. I don't let him, because again, he's not dumb and neither am I. All right, so he takes mine. But now, do you see the move to play? Some of you will say yes. Some of you will say no. So again, I'm dragging this out slightly longer so that you don't have to necessarily pause the video. So some of you guys, maybe of the 1500 ballpark or above, should be able to see this fairly easily. And maybe a little bit lower guys could too. It just depends on your experience factor. Rating is not the whole thing, but it gives you a ballpark of experience. So it's in the, in the 15, 1400, depending if you've seen it before. But you really probably can't make it to 1500 if you haven't seen this kind of thing before. So here's the move. It's a classic. Much like a Desperado, the in-between check is interfering with the losing side. And now, as I said, this is a Desperado of he who queens first wins. Well, that's me. I queen, I win. But it took me, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes maybe to figure this out, because it's just bizarre. You've seen problems, or you'll see problems where one side does the rook to the 8th rank check, and then the other guy doesn't capture it, and he plays rook takes rook in front of the pawn. But I've never seen it twice in the same problem. That's what made this an awesome problem. Okay. So I've never seen this sequence where I take his rook in front of the pawn, and then he does exactly the same thing to me, or vice versa. Okay. But this is the classic tactic that you learn at some point, and if this is the first time you've seen it, well then, I'm honored to be teaching you. The rook vacates. This is a clearance sacrifice. He clears the square to queen by sacrificing the rook with check. He has to respond, and we queen. So, like I said, this was an awesome problem. I had to show it to you guys. So, like the video, comment, and let me know if you also thought it was awesome, and if you got any of those moves that I was hoping that you guys would get. Subscribe and you get more gold if you're not subscribed. I will talk to you guys later.